Hello, welcome to this video. This video is about the S parameters. In the S parameters, the S stands for scattering, so it's about the scattering parameters. These scattering parameters are significant because they define the behavior of a circuit. Two more interesting points about the scattering parameters are that number one, they are independent of the excitations, and number two, the diagonal elements are reflection coefficients. The diagonal elements of a scattering matrix. Right, here we can see a scattering parameter matrix. The diagonal elements are these. These are the diagonal elements, which are the reflection coefficients. Okay, and the non-diagonal elements are called through parameters. The reason for why we have named these as such, we're going to discuss a bit later on when we will define what the scattering the elements of the scattering matrix, what they stand for, what do they mean. Okay, so moving forward, this right here is port number 1, and I'm just seeing the color a bit. Yeah, this right here is port number 1. These are the two terminals on the port, and these are the two terminals of the second port. So this right here is the second port. Now it's a convention that the signals that are going inside the LTI black box or the two-port network, the signals that are going inside, right, four signals are here: V1 plus, V1 minus, and V2 plus, V2 minus. And convention is that the signals that are going in towards the LTI black box, they are named as with the positive sign. Okay, in the subscript we write plus, and the signals that are coming out here, the signal 1 is going in, so it's a V1 plus, and V1 minus, it's going, this is not supposed to be V1, this is V2. Here V2 minus, this is V2 minus. Okay, because it's going out, so it's named, it's just a naming convention. It's it has a negative sign in its superscript. Alright, now the ingoing use of the excitation voltages. Alright, this is the concept of the two-port network, that usually in a two-port network we have 4 signals. We take them as the voltages. We can also do it of the current, but we usually more comfortable with voltages, and that's why we do it with voltages more. Alright, so as we have 4 signals in a two-port network, we take 2 of these signals as the excitation signals, and 2 of the signals are taken as response signals, and this allows us to analyze the circuit. And basically what we're going to do is that we are going to write the response signals in terms of the excitation signals. Right, in this case we're going to take the ingoing waves as the excitation voltages. So the ingoing waves are V1 plus and V2 plus, and we're going to take the outgoing waves as the response voltages, and those happen to be V1 minus and V2 minus. So the concept is similar, just as in the case of the two-port network. We write the response signals in terms of the excitation signals. In this case, the response signals are V1 minus and V2 minus, so we're going to write them in terms of the excitation signals. Excitation signals here are V1 plus and V2 plus. So that's what we have done. We have written them in terms of the response signals in terms of the excitation signals. Now obviously we have to put here, now these are for the 4 boxes. As you can see, these are actually the scaling factors, and these scaling factors in this case are the scattering elements. Now here this is S11, and you can see S11 here, and now this is S22, and this would be S21, and here it's S22. Okay, so these are basically the scaling factors. That is how that is the basic purpose of these scattering elements. But to get the interesting part comes when you see how do we calculate the values of S11 and S12. Now from these equations you can see that from these, for example, we take the first equation, we want to find what's the value of S11. Now we can control v1 and v2 plus because these are excitation signals. So how about we kill v2 plus? Alright, we set it to 0. Then what will happen is this whole thing is going to vanish and we'll be left with this. Now we can define S11 in terms of two voltages, v1 minus over v1 plus, and we're also going to mention that v2 plus is set to 0. So this is basically the concept of S11 and S12. S11 tells us that if now here we can see that let's just do one more. How about from the second one? Alright, the same thing we're going to do for this equation now. Let's put v2 plus equal to 0. What will v2 plus equal to 0? What we will be left with is this. Is this part. Okay. Oh, sorry. This part. Alright. So that's good. So this is what we will be left with, and we can define S21. S21 to be the ratio of v2 minus to v1 plus, and we also want to mention here that v2 plus has been set to 0. So that's cool. Now we can see what S21 actually tells us is that what is the response at port 2 when we excite port 1 only. This is your response, and when you excite port 1 only. Now we can see this in the subscript. This second number always tells us which is the excitation, and the first number here, this always tells us which is the response. So basically S21 tells us, as you can see, this is the excitation and this is the response. So S21 is telling us what is the response at 2 when the excitation is at 1. And similarly, S11 tells us what is the response at 1 when the excitation is at 1. And S21 and then S22, for example, tells us what is the response at 2 when the excitation is at 2. Alright, now we can clearly see that S11 is simply a reflection coefficient. Why? Because we are seeing when the incoming signal we're seeing at port 1, so this is our excitation, we're seeing how much of that is coming back. So basically how much of that is reflected back. Alright, oh, sorry, this is 1. This at 1. So how much of that is reflected back? So this is basically v1 minus and this is v2 plus. This is why S11 is the reflection coefficient. Similarly, S22 is a reflection coefficient because we're seeing if we give the signal at 2, how much of that signal we're going to get back, how much of that signal is going to get reflected back. Similarly, S23 is also telling us the same thing. Alright, so I think I've written most of these here. Moving forward, let me show you that. Yeah, here they are. So S11 is this. We wrote it before as well, so I had written it before. S11 is this, v1 minus over v1 plus, v2 plus is 0, and this is a reflection coefficient. Reflection coefficient symbol, its symbol is this, and this is the reflection coefficient. 1 indicates it's the reflection coefficient at port 1, and this is gamma 2. It's called gamma. It's a reflection coefficient, and it's at port 2, that's why it's subscript, and that subscript we've written 2. Right, S21, as we can see, the excitation is at 1, the response is at V2. Alright, the other excitation is 0. This condition is very important. And S12, in S12 we have the response at 1 and the excitation is V2. Alright, that's nice. It was just a bit of a quick check, so let's check that. I can see I've written them all right. Alright. Yeah, I think that's it. That's it about the scattering parameters and the scattering matrix. Comment below if there's still any ambiguity about this concept. Thanks for watching. Allah Hafiz.